Okay, hello and welcome to another edition of NCAA Game Breakdowns. Today we're looking at a really fun game between Syracuse and Virginia. I just want to read off some stats from this game. 18-17 the final, about as tight of a game as you could find, at least statistically. Syracuse had a fair lead in the shots. They led by 12, but everything else was pretty much identical. So shots on goal, 33-32 for Virginia. One-shot game, literally. Saves tied at 15. Difference is one save in the game. Turnovers, Virginia +1 in the turnover category. Difference in the game. Clears, about the same. 4 failed clears for Cuse. And then 2 for Virginia. Ground balls, a dead tie. I don't know if I've ever seen that. Face-off, Syracuse +3. And then +1 on the extra man goals by Cuse. But the ground balls are tied. The turnovers, 1 goal, 1 different. Saves tied. Shots on goal, 1 different. And the score, unsurprisingly, given those stats, just a difference of 1 goal. Hard to really kind of analyze the difference in this game. A few hustle plays for Syracuse. I think one thing that's notable is Virginia seems to be having Virginia-like plays go against them more than normal. 2 goals by long stick players in this game by Cuse. Some great ride backs by Cuse and stuff that Virginia used to do to everybody. Other teams are giving them a little bit of the taste of their own medicine for now. As mentioned on the broadcast, that was a great call by Kark. 20 straight wins after a loss for Virginia, so their first subsequent loss in 20 games. And I think that mostly speaks to how hard the ACC is with a resurgent Syracuse rather than anything really that wrong with Virginia. Virginia's still awesome. You know, Shellenberger and Cormier are statistically the best duo ever in college lacrosse, or at least they're about to be. And they're going to be a real tough out for everyone. One thing that I did think was different in this game, and I think separates these two teams, or maybe not separates them, but is a difference between these two teams, is Syracuse's second-line midfield, one of the toughest units to deal with in the country, mostly because of Jake Stevens. You know, he'd be a first-liner pretty much everywhere. He's kind of a quasi-first-liner for Cuse because he plays on the face-off wing and in a variety of different scenarios. They actually play a lot of their guys in different scenarios, including Sam English. English and Stevens have been college teammates their whole careers. They're grown men out there, and obviously came up with some big plays in the end. But Stevens comes up with 2 goals and 2 assists. Roa gets in on the scoring as well. And you could just tell late in the game, Roa was getting a lot of minutes. They seem to kind of be playing Leo with both lineups. So you have Thompson and English, and then Stevens and Roa, and then they obviously want to have a lefty out there, which is why I think Leo is getting the double shifts. It's a hard unit to deal with, and unlike Virginia's guys, even when the second line's out there, they still initiate their offense through the midfield. So Virginia's second line, they don't play as much as as Syracuse. And when they do, they go right to the big little with Shellenberger. They're trying to set picks for him, trying to get him onto short sticks. It's a very viable strategy. But I think it's great for Cuse that they don't have to change their mentality at all between the two midfield lines. They're going to get it up with their righties in the high wing, and they're going to come right at you. They're going to try to run it down your throat. And they're going to take the middle of the field, and that's something that both their lines do really well. Stevens does a really good job of that. I know he got one of his goals going underneath, but when he's dodging, he's mostly looking to get to his strong hand, which is kind of a classic Canadian maneuver, but it works very well for him. Again, in a game with so few differentiators, I thought, that was big. The goaltending, I thought, was very strong for both teams. Will Marks has been outstanding all year. And Nunes, there's very few college programs in the country where his little saveless streak there would have gotten as much attention as it did, both on the broadcast and in social. That's part of playing at Virginia. And to come back, he had 8 saves in the third, 4 in the fourth, and some really big ones as well. 2 huge ones on Hilt there in the fourth quarter. I think it speaks to the mental toughness that he has, and just want to commend him for that because he's in a rare position of public criticism. Doesn't happen a lot in the lacrosse world. It's going to happen more as our sport grows, and the growth is a good thing. Having kids face the fire like this for stuff that they're working through is not always going to be fun for guys. And credit to him for battling back and again was one save short here, but got back to 15 saves, kind of matched Mark, who was strong throughout, but still ended up only with 15 saves. So a big theme in this game was pick play, and you saw two very different approaches. So Finn Thompson was doing a great job. Slip Thompson, as he's being referred to by Clark. A few things I want to point out here. One, just the goals when he scored are not the only goals when his slips were important. There's a goal. This is early in the second quarter. Leo's dodging against a pole. Finn sets a good pick. Some indecision by Virginia lets Leo step down and crush it. This sets up his slips later in the game. And then one of the reasons why his slips were so successful is because they're short stick. And this is because, especially with the pull on Muley, there's always a pull on Leo. So that leaves a lot of times two short sticks on English and Thompson. Now, why is this important? Well, most defenses across the country, especially ones with good short sticks, are going to tell their guys to switch short on short picks. And that is where the slip comes in. You could see there was some indecision by the Virginia defenders a couple times when it happened, but it's even more useful on short because that's all you're usually thinking defensively is switch, and you avoid a pull really getting out there aggressively and messing your shit up. All right, a couple good angles here of the short slip pick by Finn. You can tell, especially from this next angle, number 10 is looking to switch. Short stick. That's normally a switch situation. Bad communication by Virginia here. Okay, this is out of a timeout for Syracuse, kind of a classic Canadian box across action. So Sam English is going to carry down to the wing, and then right about here, the role for the on-ball defender changes. So initially, he's trying to push Sam down the alley. Now Sam's going to square up his hips and try to get over top. This creates a pick down scenario, a classic switch scenario for the defense. Finn recognizes this and slips out of it. But with the double pick, they're making it really hard on the on-ball defender, and Finn recognizes it, slips, and then disciplined shooting, went low to high on the last one, low to low on this one. Disciplined shooting does not always mean high to low. I thought Thompson got a lot of credit on the broadcast for being a picker. I thought Muley did a nice job as well. He got the short stick pretty much from the jump in this game. And on one of Leo's goals, I thought it was really impressive. Muley's getting the short stick, and they want to get him off the short stick. And this is a concept that had been actually introduced to me by Coach Jim Mitchell with the Cannons. But when a player can dodge down the alley against a pole and then roll back into a pick, very hard to not switch those picks. And you saw this happen with Muley and Leo. Leo goes hard down the alley, turns back, rolls back, and then Muley's there to set a pick with the left hand. Okay, so Leo gets this on the wing, goes hard down the alley at his pull, rolls back into a pick by Muley. Obviously, the defender trips here, and Muley ends up scoring, but very hard to not switch these. So they get a goal out of this, but worst case scenario, you're going to get Leo onto a short stick, which is what Cuse is going to want most times. Good job by Muley of punishing the short stick against him. Doesn't always mean you have to dodge, but a good pick, throwback, smash. And it's almost impossible for the defender to take the man down the alley, cut off the underneath dodge, and then defend him back over the top, which is why it's such an effective play. Now, why is this important? Well, it sets up the slip picks later in the day because now you're getting Virginia to think about having to jump the picks or get out over top, switch, and that's when the slip picks come into importance. Muley's gotten short stick throughout the year. It's pretty clear Syracuse had a plan for it this time. The plan for it was basically to have him set picks for everybody. He set picks for Leo on the wing, behind, in the high wings, everywhere. I think that's a pretty viable strategy. When they just tried to have him dodge against it, it wasn't great for Cuse. That kind of was what Virginia wanted. Teams with big athletic D-middies will invite that. I think in the future, Muley needs to look to score in those situations, especially against Virginia. Going to have some video clips included here. But Virginia is so long, if you hesitate and offensive coaches call it survey, try to look through the defense, you're really in trouble because their length to skip passes makes it very hard to throw through passes against them. I think future teams who get their attackmen onto short sticks against Virginia, you got to look to score and you got to be decisive. I think that's really the key against this Virginia defense is you have to be decisive. They will kill indecision because of their athleticism and length. So flipping sides of the field to Virginia. So Virginia took a mostly different approach to their pick game. They really did a good job of setting hard picks for Shellenberger. I thought number two for Virginia, Thomas Menke made a really subtle but impressive play on an early goal by Shellenberger. All right, with Virginia's second line in the game, they're going to Big Little. Menke's back there with Shellenberger. Gets blown up. Probably should have been a penalty. And then the key play is right here. With picks around the goal line, almost every defense in the country is going to look to switch or to double, which means Menke's man has to be above him to jump out on Shellenberger. When he seals him, he doesn't allow the switch, and then for extra measure, he also picks Schellenberger's man, which creates an easy lane up the hash, and Shelley is probably the best right-handed up the hash shooter in the country. Menke creates this goal by first sealing his own man and then getting Schellenberger's. If you are a defense, you have to get Shellenberger to his left hand. If you let him shoot on the run with his right hand from any of his sweet spots, you're toast. And I think number one of those is up the hash. You're just not going to make enough saves going up the hash. He's a pretty dynamic shooter. Other times throughout the game, trying to get Shellenberger onto short sticks. I thought Virginia, again, it was pretty clear they're trying to set hard picks. I don't hate that, especially behind the goal. And I said this last week. I thought Carr called it out well on the broadcast. In the money possessions, they're going to get a pick for Shellenberger behind. They're going to try to get that dive sit to Cormier inside. That is still the sweet spot for this offense. They got Cormier a great look late in the game. Wasn't able to cash it. That's not going to happen very often. On that note, Cormier passes Zach Greer in this game to become the all-time leader by a Canadian in the NCAA history, and he's got not a whole lot left to go to catch Gutterding and then eventually O'Keefe. Don't want to jinx him, but just an absurd run of consistent scoring. He's almost at 50 goals already, and we're not yet into conference tournament time. We've still got a long way to go. There's a potential for him to get to 60 or maybe even higher than that. If you're Syracuse, I think the thing that is going to frustrate you from this game is also kind of inverse related to the thing you're most pumped about. Some sloppy turnovers by Syracuse, which is a bit of a trend for them, and they just kind of gave a few away to Virginia, but they really did win this game because of hustle plays. I'll try to throw some of the clips in, but ride backs to goals. I think Muley did an outstanding job of scoring on ride backs and other situations, really justifying his role out there, because when you get short sticked, it's tough as an attackman. It can really mess with you. But he found a lot of ways to compete and to score, which is important for him and for this offense. And then one of the stories of this entire season for Syracuse has been goals by non-offensive personnel. Billy Dwan has got 7 goals this year for a college long stick. That's absurd. PLL, we get up and down a little bit more. Some of the big scorers, especially with the 2-point shot, can get their numbers up there. 7 goals in a big conference by Dwan is a lot, and Sam Alexo's got a lot. Cone has got a lot, and then they get a really nice goal by Wyatt Hoddle in this game, which is the epitome of what I'm talking about. You can't hesitate against this Virginia defense, but if you don't hesitate, there are opportunities there because they're playing aggressively. They're playing most of the time to the boundary. He caught it right around the midline, and he took it right to the crib and scored and was fired up. Wearing 19 on the day when that number goes into the rafters in the Carrier Dome, forever the Carrier Dome. Pretty cool. And then Matt Wright, Canadian, scores a big goal as well as a long stick. The right goal transitions me into another thing I want to talk about, which something that Owen Hiltz does a great job of. When I played in college, I played with John Piatelli. He led all Division I scorers his last year at Cornell. One of the things he was really great at that I always took from him is as the top man on a fast break, the top attackman on a fast break, he would often loop back over the defense. Whether when you get the pass, usually the cutters keep going. The defensive players who are covering those cutters kind of just pass you by, and then he would often take the middle and would usually step into shots. Owen Hiltz did a great job of this. It led to the Matt Wright goal, also led to another goal later in the game. Just a really subtle way of overlapping on the fast break, letting kind of the mess of it pass you by, and then allows you to survey the defense and often create open looks, and led to some bad transition defense by Virginia, but I think that's mostly just really good offense by Cuse. And on that note, Hiltz was the player of the game, looking aggressively for a shot. He's got a wicked release. Kark said you can't teach guys how to shoot like that, but I think you can in Peterborough, because Ethan Walker shoots like that. Mike Robinson at Delaware shoots like that. A lot of the great players coming out of that area, have that kind of release. And I think if you're trying to teach a player, it's easier to do a high to low technical shot. But if you can develop that kind of release reliably, accurately, I think there's a lot to that. Peyton Cormier has a lot of different releases. Mac O'Keefe, the all-time leading goal scorer, is basically exclusively an underhand shooter. I think there's something to that. If you can get it there, it is the most dangerous way to shoot. And then lastly, kind of a story, non-story in this game was Joe Spallina against John Schroeder. I was lucky to coach John Schroeder during his high school career on the club circuit. And when I coached him, we played Joe Spallina one time that summer. It was an incredible battle. They were both just going into their senior years of high school, but it was pretty clear how absurdly talented they both were. And, Spallina was quiet in this game. Schroeder made some sick plays. I think Schroeder will be a first-team All-American, Schmeisser type guy sooner rather than later. Especially with a lot of the other big names across the country at that position graduating. This kid is absurd. And I think it says more about him than it did about Spallina. I thought it was a credit to Spallina and to the Syracuse offense for not trying to force it, and for letting the areas of field where they had advantages, i.e. with their right-handed midfielders and Hiltz, let them go to work, let them do their thing. A very selfless, I thought, performance by Spallina, and still contributing on hustle plays and other things like that. Switching sides of the field to Virginia's offense, Shellenberger was obviously incredible. I think this new age of attackmen, when we kind of started going to positionless offense, now we're getting kind of positionless players. And I think Shellenberger, O'Neal, Kavanaugh, Kirst, Brandow, they're all examples of a kind of new age attackman where they can dodge from anywhere. And I think, one of the things that Shellenberger showed in this game, and I think McKay Millen showed it a little bit too, is they're ex-attackmen who shoot on the run like midfielders. I think when you look at a lot of the great college attackmen of the last 10 years, absurdly good players, but they had their spots where they went from all the time. And these new guys, they shoot it from so far out that they're able to just attack from anywhere. And I think you saw it through Shellenberger getting on the run and hosing it like a midfielder. And then I thought an interesting adjustment by putting McKay Millen out of the midfield allowed him to get downhill, and he ends up scoring one of his goals that way. I think one of the advantages to putting McCabe in the midfield lets him get to his right hand, lets him really sweep hard. That's where he's at his best, when he's going as hard as he can to his right hand. He's super fast, which is no surprise to anyone who knows about lacrosse history and his last name. And, he can really hose it. He can shoot it better than most attackmen can. On the run, he has more range than typical ex-attackmen have. And I think getting up in the midfield and the high wing makes it harder to shade to his left hand, which I think you've seen in a lot of these games. And he's more of a feeder to his left hand, which is unsurprising as a freshman. Still learning. He was obviously very impressive in this game. And again, to the concept of these attackmen can do a little bit of everything. McCabe, traditional ball carrying attackman, scores a goal on an off ball cut in a hang up situation, or not a hang up, but Shellenberger had the ball at X. That's not something you always see with guys who are really good at some stuff. He's a very well rounded player, and again, the ability for Shellenberger, O'Neill, Kavanaugh, Kurse, they can go from anywhere on the field, and I think that really makes it hard. You got to stay on your cues as a defender when you're with them. You think, oh, in this spot I want to push him here, this spot I want to push him here. It makes you really have to think. And one thing that all those guys do well that sets up their other success is they shoot it on the run, usually two-handed, and they can really hose it. And it's just hard to stop. For Virginia, you still had some of your classic. For Virginia, you still had some of your classic UVA stuff in terms of Ware scoring a goal. I mean, that kid's gross. And then Terenzi gets a goal as well. He's been playing a little bit of offense, but this was kind of in a semi-transition. The attack with a big game. Shelley 4, Cormier 4, Millen 3. If there's one real positive thing for Virginia, it's Colsey scoring 2 there, 2 big ones in the fourth. Secondary midfield scoring is really going to be the name of the game. You could see it a little bit when they started dodging with Schutz. People are just going to go to him now. I think the cat's out of the bag that Longstick can't cover him, or at least can't stop him from scoring, because he's one of those guys like a lot of great midfielders who can score while they're covered. I think of Sam Hanley. Think of Connor Busick, guys who could score when you're all over them. I think Schutz is in that mix. And again, the second line, 1 goal, Will Corey, and when they're in there, they're asked to do other things like set picks and play their roles. But when it starts getting really hot here, we'll see for Cuse. I think Truett Sunderland is still out with injury, and that's proven to be probably a bigger loss than Virginia thought it might be. So wanted to just talk about the end of the game. English scores a huge goal. English just makes a great play. One thing Cuse does is they put a lot of pressure on the middle of the field. I think that's significant Canadian influence, both with the players and the coaching staff. They want to get to their strong hands. When they're out there with Stevens, Thompson, English, Roa, and then Hiltz, most of their guys are playing strong hands to the middle. Leo can kind of be dynamic in that low wing, but they want to get to the middle of the field. That final goal is a good example. I thought it was a pretty cool camera shot. When English scores, they pan out. The dome is rocking. If you're on lacrosse Twitter, I think it's safe to say Syracuse is back. And then wanted just to address the end of the game. Billy Dwan was absolutely incredible in this game. The only way I think to describe the play to throw the ball deep into the corner at the end of the game is that sound. I'll try to loop it in there. Just a hilarious way to end this game. Doesn't end up hurting Virginia, but sometimes you just do stuff that hard to explain. And I guarantee Billy, if he could do a redo, he would. And I'm glad that it didn't impact his club, but a very funny way, I thought, to end the game. Instead of just throwing it into the corner, we launched a 75-yard pass across into the opposite box. So, anyways, an outstanding game. As tight as you'll see, will be a fun one if these teams match up again, either in the conference tournament or the big dance itself. Hope you enjoy this format again, and thank you for listening.